Not everything lasts forever. That's the sad reality of what's about to happen today. Video after video about Inside Out 2, it's finally time to end this series off. And I thought the best way to do that is to make a big compilation of all the previous ones, plus some new stuff along the way to keep all of you who have seen the older stuff still interested of what I have to say. So without further ado, thank you, everybody, for helping me get this far with just these videos. It's crazy how much the channel has grown ever since the first anxiety video. And I thought the best way to start things off is to give you something new. I'm gonna review nostalgia first. Something that I have not done before. Now, nostalgia isn't really a character that I have anything too much to say, other than the fact that it's a very well depicted adaptation of what nostalgia actually is. It's hilariously accurate, the fact that nostalgia really comes after a certain point in your life, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to take place just at that time. It can come a lot earlier than just that, which is exactly what they're showing in this movie. Nostalgia is a perfect way of how to write an upcoming protagonist. Now, what does upcoming mean? Well, I mean, basically, the fact that Inside Out 2 is looking to maybe be the highest grossing animated movie of all time, not just this year, well, this year and of all time, so congrats to that. I think it would be extremely stupid not to make an Inside Out 3 if this is the case. Like, I don't see there being any reason for them not to make it. And depending on how far they want to push Riley in age for the next movie, Inside Out 3 could include nostalgia and be a much prominent role. She actually has a lot of use to her because she can actually probably remember the little things that maybe the protagonist can't remember. Because, you know, that's her kind of goal, nostalgia. She is nostalgic about the older things, whether they're small or big, and can overall be a very big help to the emotions figuring out their next problem. I would also like to say, off topic, I still have COVID, and I would really appreciate if you subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get this video to, let's say, to end this all off, I'm saying 1,500 likes. I think we can do it depending on people actually watch this. I hope they do. This is hopefully going to be entertaining just as much as the other couple. Now, with one emotion down, I think it's time to go back to the very beginning. Anxiety. My second most popular video on this entire channel. Thank you everybody who tuned in to watch this, and hopefully if you haven't seen this and seen the other ones, I hope you enjoy, because this one is definitely a good one. So, let's play it. The leading character, or one of the major characters in a drama, movie, novel, or other fictional text. This is a protagonist. A person who actively opposes or is hostile to someone or something. An adversary is an antagonist. An adversary is someone or something that struggles with, opposes, or resists. In terms of movie writing, writing an antagonist is an extremely hard thing to do, because you have to make the antagonist somebody that is going against the hero. Why are they going against the hero? What exactly they're trying to do? But they can't be a villain. A villain is a character whose evil actions or motives are important to the plot. When you think of a villain, automatically there's a couple that would come to mind. Something like Darth Vader being a good one. He is a villain that does evil things against everything. But an antagonist does bad things, not necessarily evil, against the protagonist. So in reality, it's extremely hard to actually perfect one. To get one so well done, and to make sure that it is against the hero, but at the same time, the antagonist can't necessarily be too evil. They're not evil against the world, they are opposing the hero. And after Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, it kind of showed that antagonists are still a thing and can be done really well with death. But the thing is that he's a lot harder to actually replicate in another movie. So what if we think about another one from a newer movie called Inside Out 2? You've probably heard of it, you've probably seen it as well. It's making a lot of money. And basically, anxiety is probably one of the best ways to actually explain how to write a good antagonist. So let's start with this. Who is our protagonist in Inside Out 2? This is probably very easy. It's joy or one of the other 4 other emotions that are with joy the entire time because they're directly trying to help Riley. These are our heroes. And basically, once the new emotions arrive, these are officially titled our antagonists. They're not evil, but there's one that stands out: anxiety. She has a plan to help Riley that directly goes against or opposes Joy's idea of helping Riley throughout her entire shift from middle school to high school, especially being offered this opportunity to go play with a lot of good people for her hockey team and maybe even get into the high school hockey team. This is her big moment, and anxiety and Joy have opposing ideas of how to help Riley. But there's something interesting about anxiety's plan, because this basically invites the idea that Riley has to fear every single possibility that will go against her. And in doing so, will create a new Riley that gets rid of her old friends and kind of joins the popular kids. To break down a little bit of this, anxiety is a well thought out character being an antagonist because she thinks she's doing the right thing. But in reality, we can all see that this is not going to work, and it's only going to discourage Riley even more from becoming the best that she can possibly be. Anxiety is trying to help Riley, even in her flawed ways. This is what she believes is going to help her succeed. But in reality, she's opposing Joy, which gives her the role of an antagonist. But because of her anxious beliefs, she is classified as an ethical antagonist. This would make complete sense because throughout the movie, she's trying to push on Riley her beliefs of being anxious about everything around her. And because Joy doesn't want this for Riley, anxiety pushes her and the rest of the emotions out of the entire headquarters and then takes over from there to make a new Riley. The way this is accomplished is throughout the entirety of the movie, showing different versions of how anxiety works and how she gets more and more things to get on Riley's nerves to make her stronger. But in reality, this does not work. Anxiety truly believes with her own beliefs of being anxious that this will help Riley, but we only realize this makes her worse and worse, making her feel like she's not good enough. But the interesting thing is that even though that she works and works for this goal and then realizes it doesn't work, she still pushes herself to make things work in the end, which is a perfect way of tying this together. Her strong beliefs blind her from reality and what she actually has to do. And in doing this proves that she isn't evil. She's desperately trying to help, but whenever anything goes wrong, her beliefs tell her to stick to the plan and make sure that this works. It doesn't help whatsoever that anxiety actually pushing Riley farther and farther is actually helping Riley score a lot more goals, but at the same time kind of taking away from her character. Hogging and robbing the puck out of other people so they don't have the chance to make the goals Riley is, even though that they are definitely capable of it, is a very bad mindset for Riley, and one of the reasons why, at the end, her anxiety clogs and fogs up her mind, basically making her run into her friend and hurting her. This is why she was pulled out of the game for the 2 minutes to go think in the box, and this is the reason why she has the anxiety attack. Throughout the entirety of the game that she was playing, she thought she was doing the best that she can possibly do by thinking that she is the worst and that she's not good enough. And this mindset not only fogs up her entire brain, but it also kind of fogs up her vision as she runs right into her friend, too focused on the goal and what she has to do to be the best, even though she's continuously going to think of herself as not good enough. And reliving the section of the movie from the beginning, basically her being sent to the box, is the idea of why she has the anxiety attack and why she's so nervous, because anxiety is putting way too much pressure onto her. And anxiety is not even realizing that she's putting too much pressure onto her because she's too anxious of messing up her entire plan that she's been setting up for so long, and this new Riley wouldn't work. So her pushing her even farther is actually making everything a lot worse for not only Riley, but for anxiety as well. But right in the nick of time, the protagonist comes up to the antagonist and tells the antagonist why they are wrong and that they need to let go. I know I've said this a lot throughout the video, but I think this is genuinely a perfect way of showing it. Anxiety being too fast to even comprehend what she's even doing, and then all of a sudden realizing from Joy's words that she can't be the only one to control Riley. And then all of a sudden she just lets out one single tear, which practically says it all. This tear basically just holds everything, because we find out that Anxiety knows at this point that what she's doing to Riley is not good, and it's not helping her whatsoever, even though that she wants it to, and that she's been trying so hard to do it. Joy understands this and helps her out to realize that this is not what Riley should be doing, and that this is something that she has to let go. And the theater I was in, I very much heard a couple cries from this, and to be completely honest, yeah, it's really like that type of scene that you'd be like a little bit teary-eyed to, and it's fully capable of making that, because it genuinely is a fantastic way to end this protagonist and antagonist fight situation off. But the thing is, we also realized, although the antagonist is wrong, the protagonist is not necessarily in the right either, because Joy realizes that she's telling Anxiety not to control Riley, yet isn't that exactly what Joy is doing to her? And we're able to come to this kind of understanding where Anxiety is in the wrong, Joy is also in the wrong, and they find a clever way and a better way of letting Riley be who Riley wants to be. But still, even though Anxiety still has her own personal beliefs, and Joy is also having their own personal beliefs, none of them are antagonists anymore. They're all the protagonists. They're all working together because they finally realize what is right. And that's what you should take away from this entire antagonist of Anxiety. This beautiful sequel to another beautiful movie is a direct and honest way of showing and making an antagonist for a movie or anything like that. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. I think next we should just move on to Embarrassment, because that's the second one that I posted. It's also currently the second most popular of the Inside Out 2 series that I have. So let's play that. Basically, once the new emotions arrive, these are officially titled our antagonists. They're not evil. As I just said in my last video, which did fantastically, by the way, thank you every single last person that watched it, emotions are not evil, but they are indeed antagonists. And although I'm going to be specifically talking about the title of this video, Embarrassment, Envy and Ennui, if you want a video about that, get this video to, let's say, 250 likes, and then I will do it. The idea that Embarrassment is an antagonist is a little weird to think about, because he's not necessarily the antagonist that you look at Anxiety and think of, because Anxiety is a much different thing. She's ethical in her way of being an antagonist. But the idea of Embarrassment is that Embarrassment is a sympathetic antagonist. He's not the best character. He's doing things for Anxiety, aka the antagonist of the movie, but he's also pretty sympathetic in his role. And in the end, spoiler alert, he does become a lot more comfortable with joy, sadness, fear, anger, and disgust, and actually becomes one of the protagonists for maybe even Inside Out 3 if that ever happens. This is basically what happens with all the other emotions too, even Anxiety. But throughout the movie, we're kind of rooting for Embarrassment. He's the only emotion really in headquarters after they throw all the other emotions out that's actually pretty likable. And is this because he helps sadness? Well, yeah, that is definitely something about it. But let's take in mind the fact that Embarrassment is the one that hugs all of them and puts them in the jar. He is the one that does this action, not under Anxiety telling him to, but because he's following along with what every other emotion in the headquarters thinks, besides the main five. This tells us that Embarrassment agrees with what Anxiety is trying to do. Her plan is something that he also supports, and this is why he's the one that hugs them all and throws them out. But why does the audience kind of grow on Embarrassment? Well, it's a kind of complicated idea. Believe it or not, I can actually relate Embarrassment and Goldilocks from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish together, because they're both sympathetic antagonists that are doing bad things, yes, but also have a good reason to be doing this. And then sitting with the characters, you kind of realize what they're trying to do, what their thought process is, and that they actually are trying to do something for the greater good that, although goes against the protagonists, are doing something that can genuinely help. But again, just like my previous video, Goldilocks from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a harder idea to kind of explain. So talking about embarrassment is actually much easier and better to understand of how to make a sympathetic antagonist. A sympathetic antagonist is something that's much different than an actual antagonist and much easier to screw up than an actual antagonist or a protagonist, since they do bad things, but the audience also understands why they're doing this and actually view it as the movie goes on as a good thing. Something that I can come up with that is a horrible example of how to make a sympathetic antagonist is Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The antagonists in this show are supposed to be sympathetic, but the audience never really feels that. It only views them as a villain, not even an antagonist. And, well, why is this? Well, they kind of cause terrorism, and they kill people that are completely innocent, and they do bad things against the world, which, if you haven't watched my last video, is what villains do. Antagonists are directly opposing the protagonist or protagonists. And that this is a good idea of that it's really hard to make a sympathetic antagonist because they're doing bad things, but they also can't do too bad of things, but they also still have to do bad things because you want to make them an antagonist, but also you want to make them against the heroes instead of against the world. So it's really hard to do this, and if that did not make sense of what just came out of my mouth, that's exactly what I'm getting at. It's really hard to do this. There are so many factors that come into play when you're making an antagonist, and to make that antagonist sympathetic along the way is much harder. So when we have embarrassment starting off to be something that makes Riley feel a bad emotion, and then all of a sudden kidnaps the original 5 emotions, and then is the one to kidnap them and throw them into the jar, that's something that sets up embarrassment as an antagonist against the protagonists. We initially don't see anything good about him until we get farther into the movie, when we realize that embarrassment, although he agrees with anxiety, thinks that anxiety doing her job is not really doing the job that he'd want it to be like. And this, despite every single last piece of fan art that I've ever seen with sadness and embarrassment, you people are disgusting. Oh my god! This is how you do it. Now let's remove the fact that maybe there's some chemistry between sadness and embarrassment, and let's just kind of separate that from what I'm about to say. Embarrassment over the movie kind of realizes that joy, sadness, anger, disgust, and fear actually have a really key important part with Riley, and that anxiety's plan, although something that he supports, is not really being done the way he wants it to be, and he realizes that over time that maybe this is not the best thing for Riley. He's not a talking character, he's too embarrassed to speak up. He doesn't have that type of confidence, so he can't actually let his emotions of what's happening kind of come out of his mouth. And all of a sudden, recognizing sadness is in headquarters, he actually decides to help her because he realizes that she might be the key to get the emotions back. And that after seeing what anxiety has done to Riley so far, he's not really in agreement with that. And this is how he starts to be sympathetic, because he actually starts to help the protagonist, the people that we are rooting for, even if it's going against what he believes. And that we start to realize that he's not the same antagonist like anxiety is, and that he actually wants something good for Riley in the way that anxiety is trying to pitch it. But he realizes that anxiety is not doing a good job of actually executing this, and that helping sadness, he realizes that he can actually get what he wants, but with working together with all the emotions and not just having anxiety dictate everything that's going on in Riley's head, which is something that, later comes up and is like the metaphor for the movie. But, I'm not like the explanation for the entire movie, so you can go watch another video about that. This is about embarrassment. And just like Goldilocks from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, we start to realize that these characters aren't actually as bad as they were in the beginning. And as we start to realize their motives and what they actually want, we start to kind of sympathize with them and realize that even though that they are going against what the protagonist or the heroes want, they do have something that is good, and in no means represent something like the other antagonist of the movie. And to wrap it all up, Embarrassment is a sympathetic antagonist. He's being shown in the beginning that he's not really the best person out there. but that doesn't make him evil or bad. He's just doing something that he thinks is right, but over time he starts to realize something that maybe the audience didn't realize about him in the beginning, and that he actually has a lot more heart than you'd think. And the audience actually figures out that he actually knows what's good and what's bad, and this is why he helps Sadness to stop anxiety, to realize that there is a much better way of tackling things that still goes for his way. Third, to keep it chronological, I think that it's probably a good idea to talk about Envy next. A lot of people's favorites, so hopefully you enjoy if you haven't seen this one. This one's definitely a good one. A person who knowingly, voluntarily, or intentionally gives assistance to another in the commission of a crime is an accomplice. Now, a good and kind of recent example of what an accomplice can be is something like the Minions from Despicable Me. They are always there beside Gru to help him in his next evil plan. This is something that we see in every single last Despicable Me film, even in the Minions movies, as they are a key part of each plan that Gru has, while also being a very reliable way to get that plan done. But the thing is that with the Minions, they're a lot harder to kind of like take apart, because there's not too much to take apart of them. They're literally minions. Their entire goal in life is to serve somebody who is evil, and Gru just happens to be that person. But the reason why it's a little bit hard to actually kind of break down and actually explain to everybody here is that they don't really do too much besides that. They make jokes, they do their crimes, that's it. Also gives Illumination the big bucks. But after the recent success of both my anxiety video and my embarrassment video, which if you haven't seen, you should go watch, I think it's time for me to talk about a lot of people's favorite character in the movie, Envy. Ennui will come, I promise that. I'm going to talk about Envy first because this got a couple more votes in the poll. And you might be thinking, why talk about Envy? Like, she's not really in the movie too much, and yes, I will give you that, but I actually do have a really good and important message with this video, and that honestly, you should go see Inside Out 2 again. It's not like I'm sponsored or anything, I've just seen it twice, and I think there's something on my second rewatch that really came out with it. Specifically about Envy and Ennui that I didn't see while watching the first time, but I'll save Ennui for a separate video because I think that's interesting on its own. So I do have a Sunday video planned for Despicable Me 4, but if you want an Ennui video on Wednesday, then let's get this video to 500 likes. We were able to crush that like goal in the embarrassment video in around, I think, 5 hours, so I think we can do this one. So what Inside Out 2 is trying to convey to us is that Envy is a perfect way of how to show us how to write a good accomplice. Envy is something that I think is a perfect representation in this movie. Like, I think without Envy, if they replaced it with jealousy, the entire tone and movie would just kind of shift and be completely different. Envy is actually really important to this plot, and her great representation of what Envy actually is kind of shows more of an angst side to Riley, which is a very crucial part of this movie, especially when it talks about, you know, puberty. So what's interesting to see is that Anxiety's plan is already bad enough. It's going to make Riley hate herself even more. And because Anxiety has asserted her dominance over the rest of the emotions by throwing them out and basically taking over from there, creating a new Riley having this whole big plan, it's a good reason why Envy is pretty envious of this. She wants to be the one with this big plan. She wants to impress Anxiety with what she has. She wants to be the one in control. So that's why she is constantly helping, because she actually has a reason to. She has a drive to actually be as good as Anxiety, that even she isn't able to see how bad of a plan this actually is until the end, when Anxiety starts to show a true side to her. And secretly, if you've seen the movie, that scene where Riley's trying to figure out how to walk is not only relatable, but a really crucial idea to show what Envy actually really does. Desperately trying to fit in just because of how they walk, that she completely misses the idea of why they're even laughing and just kind of assumes that they have to laugh too because that's what cool people do. And that she's so distracted by Anxiety that she doesn't understand how to be a good emotion and how to actually help Riley, that in the end, Envy is the one to push Riley in this wrong direction. Anxiety has the plan, but Envy pushed her to the party. She made her think about how she's walking, and also just in the first place was extremely envious about Val's hair that started this entire idea of trying to fit in. And along with Riley trying to fit in with the rest of the hockey players, Envy is trying to fit in with the rest of the emotions. And by giving the accomplice a reason to be an accomplice, trying to do everything that they can to be good, or even be better than the rest, it really helps your case here. It's a very important emotion to have because it really helps the entire plot go along. Her want for everything makes her a very good and well-written, ignorant accomplice. I do want to break this down just a little bit more, because I think there's a reason to why the audience doesn't really take into mind envy as much as they do anxiety and embarrassment. Anxiety's whole plan is the main plot of the movie. This is the thing that the protagonists have to get back to headquarters and stop, while embarrassment is something that along the way is actually helping. Kind of like a gentle giant that kind of came out of his shell at the very end. And what the audience is missing about Envy is that her plot and her idea is kind of pushed under the rug a little bit, because she does not have as much screen time and also lines as the rest of the emotions. Well, besides Ennui, but we'll get back into that in another video. The audience passes up Envy's actual plot and relevance in the movie as some sort of accomplice is what I'm saying, but not really to the idea that I'm trying to explain it as. And I'm not trying to criticize how subtle Envy is throughout this movie, because honestly, I'm praising it. It's really well written. But here's the reason why a lot of people have missed this. Most people don't go to see a movie twice. Usually they go see it once, and then they see it again like 10 years down the line again. The thing is that if you go back into Inside Out 2 and watch it again and actually pay close attention of how Envy is described and kind of shows her actions, you'll actually understand an entire part of the movie that you missed before, which I think is really beautiful about it. It makes the movie extremely rewatchable to go watch these other characters that you didn't pay attention to as much kind of show themselves a little bit more. While of course it's the exact same plot, but it adds another entire element to it. And from what I've said about the accomplice side of Envy, it really makes this movie something that on the surface, it's not too much, but when you go see it again, the accomplice side comes out, and it's really well written. And lastly, for the ones that have already been posted, Ennui. Something that in the beginning had a lot of filler, but it was genuinely coming from a good place, so I hope that didn't make too many people mad. Not as much to say about her, but we'll get into that in just a second, so let's play that. Showing or feeling no interest, enthusiasm, or concern. That is the definition of apathetic. And I mean, you probably know that this video is going to be about Ennui based on the thumbnail and the title, but I thought just in case if people don't know what apathetic means, I just thought I'd say it. I thought that maybe as well to kind of introduce people of what an apathetic character can be, I thought I'd show an example. This is Negasonic Teenage Warhead. A very weird name, yeah, I know. But also, at the same time, this is a perfect example, especially with the new Deadpool and Wolverine movie coming out soon. I thought that maybe it was a good idea to kind of reintroduce Deadpool to some people. This is one of the characters in the first Deadpool movie, and this is the perfect idea of what an apathetic character is. She's not an antagonist like how I'm about to talk about Ennui as, but she's basically just a teenager kind of relating to Riley in a bit, who's extremely apathetic. She doesn't really care for anything, but she has great power. Keep that in mind, by the way. She practically has no expression on her face at any time during the movie, and whenever the one time that she actually shows any emotion, Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds, kind of like nods at that, because that's literally the only time she says anything nice. Now you might be wondering, Enchanted, why keep in the fact that she has great power and the fact that also this is from Deadpool, this is an R-rated movie compared to the PG Inside Out 2? Well, there's a good reason for this, not only the fact that both of these are by Disney, well, they weren't, but now Deadpool is. And it's not the idea that Deadpool and Wolverine is coming out soon, although that is a good reason why I'm bringing up this kind of idea. But the real reason I bring this up is because Ennui has been one of the most requested videos I have ever had. Scratch that, ever had, not one of them, of all time. Even though that this thing was the lowest percentage in the entire poll that I took for which emotion you'd want to see a video for. But for some reason, people really want this, so I'm really happy to actually give it to all of you now. I hope you all enjoy as well, and here's something. So let's get on to the actual video essay part, the thing that you are here for. Ennui. I'm so sorry that took so long and that was most of the video. But here's Ennui. This is what you want. Yay. And this is how you write an apathetic antagonist. So at the beginning of the video, I talked about what apathetic actually means, and I think there's not really a doubt in my mind that probably everyone can relate apathetic with ennui immediately after hearing that definition. It literally is a lot of the same things. It's just different titles. Why was I talking about that specific character from Deadpool and to keep in mind the power? Well, I'm just going to jump into this because, you know, why not? Ennui is a very overlooked character in all of Inside Out 2, and it kind of makes sense because she doesn't have that many lines and she's not actually that present on screen. But I think people really underestimate her. Specifically, when I'm talking about the scene with the sarcasm, the thing that was kind of ruined in the trailer, to be completely honest, but is still kind of funny on its own. But why bring in power to this? Well, I think you might be able to connect the dots a little bit on this, because think about this. Ennui, just with a click of a button, she is able to make this huge crater in Riley's mind, just because of one sarcastic comment she makes. And what's interesting here is with that amount of power, she still expresses barely any emotion. She's ennui, she's apathetic, which is what I think kind of makes her character really interesting and overlooked. Ennui has the full power to do this that not any of the other emotions can do. This is what she can do in her only. And honestly, something that can be pretty scary to think about is the fact that she has no emotion, and she just did this huge thing. This is the reason why she's the apathetic antagonist of them all. She's against the protagonist, but she's not evil. She's not considered a villain. But she has strong apathy and also strong power with that, which also makes it a little bit unnerving. The real point of this video was to kind of tell a lot of people about me moving forward from this. But at the same time, I did want to get something out for Ennui, definitely. And I'm sorry if I disappointed anybody with this, but like, as well, Ennui's not really on screen for that much. I really had to pull something out that I thought was really interesting about it. And sorry that it kind of was undershadowed by, you know, all of the other stuff. But I think it's still really important. Without ennui, without embarrassment, without envy, and without anxiety, Inside Out 2 would not be the same whatsoever. It's a completely original movie, and without any of these characters, even just one of them switched, would have made it a complete different movie. Just take that into mind for a second. Even though that Ennui is not as important as any of the other characters, something that I had a hard time coming up with something for. But no matter what, she's still extremely important to the plot. It shows a new side of Riley as well, and with her power, who knows what she can do to Riley if she had more of the opportunity to actually use the console. And finally, I think it's time to actually talk about Riley herself. I mentioned this in the Ennui video just a second ago, about the fact that if any of these emotions were changed throughout the entirety of Inside Out 2, this would have been a much different movie. No matter even if ennui was changed to something else, if envy was changed to jealousy, those are big deals. This movie would not be the same whatsoever if it did not have these 4 characters. Well, 5, including nostalgia as well. These 5 are extremely important to the plot. If any of them were changed, everything would change. Everything that you loved about this movie would have been altered in some different way if there was any other emotion. As I have explained, all of these different characters play a crucial part of the movie, whether they are used incredibly much more than the rest of them, or if they've been used just a little bit throughout the movie. They're all important to the story and the problems that take place throughout it, to cause even more problems or just push the plot forward in the best way possible. Riley overall with these new emotions has changed throughout the entirety of it, learning new lessons and forming a new self that still represents the self that we knew back in the original Inside Out. There was a huge progression throughout the entirety of the movie and what we saw off screen, where Riley has learned new beliefs and how to control them. Overall, Inside Out 2 is a perfect sequel because it teaches the audience the hard times of this point of life, but at the same time, it shows us how we can take advantage of this time and how that we can be the best even during bad times. And with that, Riley has grown from the first movie and kept that growth to go into the second movie, as we realize more stuff about her as she has more screen time. And all these different emotions, the new and the old, help create this new Riley that would have not been possible if any of the emotions were switched out. Inside Out 2, I will say this once again, is a perfect sequel to Inside Out. There is no better way that this movie would have gone. It could have gone somewhere else, but I'm glad that it didn't. And I think everybody should be able to appreciate the fact that this is what we got. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you stuck around for this long, write in the comments, "We are Enchanted." Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm Enchanted.